You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them.
This is Massive Late Fee with Mike and Mark.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Massive Late Fee. My name is Mark. With me, not as always, but for special, is my wife, Carol. How you doing, Carol?
Hey everybody, how's it going?
So it's going to be a quick and dirty episode here today. We watched The Rise of Skywalker, the new Star Wars movie, and I felt compelled to talk about it. Carol watched it, and I don't know exactly how she feels about it because we haven't really talked about it. But I also asked Mike if he wanted to watch Star Wars, and he said, fuck no.
So you get me. What a treat for you.
But, Carol, I'm not going to go through the whole plot of The Rise of Skywalker.
But there will be spoilers.
Oh, yes. We usually don't say it, but just know that basically this entire conversation is going to be a complete spoilers. There will be no section where we don't really talk about spoilers. So if you don't want any part of the movie spoiled, tune out now, go watch the movie, and then come back and listen to this.
Right.
So this movie was directed by J.J. Abrams, written and directed by J.J. Abrams, and his, I think, cast and son maybe had a hand in it. Somebody else had a hand in it as well. And this comes off the back of The Last Jedi, which was written and directed by Rian Johnson, which was a very divisive movie. I hate it. I absolutely hate that movie. It's one of the worst Star Wars movies, in my opinion. There are a lot of people that like it. Chris, who hosts We're Watching Here, lists it as his favorite Star Wars movie, which I don't understand or fathom.
You know, I only watched it once, and I literally fell asleep.
Yeah, it's not. I have a lot of problems with that. We're not going to really talk about that movie that much, but I have a lot of problems with that movie. There are tonal problems with that movie. There are structural problems with that movie. There are pacing problems with that movie. There are weird editing choices in the movie. There's a lot of problems that are just like fundamental nuts and bolts problems with that movie, in my opinion. Not to mention how it utterly fails to be a sequel to The Force Awakens. This movie has some similar-ish issues.
Oh, yes.
Carol, give me your initial impressions of this movie.
Much like the prior episode, it was slightly boring.
Yep.
And it really pissed me off in the end.
There are about 4 moments in the end that I've seen this movie twice now. There are about 4 parts in the end, 4 moments in the end where I think you could hear my eyes rolling the first time that I saw this. This movie, so I don't know how much you're aware of the fan kind of, like I said, The Last Jedi was very polarizing, but there's a big like debate online amongst the fans between whether The Last Jedi was good or The Last Jedi was terrible, and just kind of Star Wars as a whole. There's this whole section of like white nationalism or something.
What?
Because there are a bunch of people that's like, oh, get woke, go broke. That's a big buzz phrase where it's like, oh, Star Wars is so woke because they want to be so inclusive of this and that and the other thing and everything. And so they're like, we're not going to, go see this movie. We're going to protest, Star Wars because Kathleen Kennedy is some uber feminist and she's making Star Wars into some kind of propaganda stuff. It's all bullshit in my opinion. But there's these like just tons of different factions out there that argue about Star Wars all the time. And part of it is just because that's sort of what the internet does.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me that this is becoming political just talking about this movie, but
yeah,
it is America, so.
Right. But I think Star Wars suffers more from the fan chatter than any other franchise. Because, like Marvel, for instance, the MCU, they there's a lot of fan chatter about that, but they, like Kevin Feige, who kind of oversees all the movies. He's the producer behind all of them, and he has like a story team or whatever, and they have like the arc that they just did with all the movies that had just finished, basically. Like he's kind of the architect of that, how the overarching story goes from movie to movie, but each movie they allow their writers and directors a certain amount of freedom as long as they stay within the arc of, hey, this is where the story's going, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that seems to work. Everybody seems to be able to pull together and kind of, move the train along in the right direction, but also put their own kind of individualized stamp on it a little bit. And they don't seem to pay too much attention to what the fans are talking about. Star Wars does not have that same confidence or same swagger, because unfortunately, so Kathleen Kennedy is not Kevin Feige. She doesn't have, she either doesn't have the structural skills or the story skills or what to oversee, in my opinion, to oversee this, because it's too choppy. Everything's too choppy. You had J.J. Abrams do The Force Awakens, which was a soft reboot of A New Hope. Then you had Rian Johnson come in and try to do something different, and just, like I said, in my opinion, made a bad movie. And then, and the problem is J.J. Abrams set a lot of stuff up in The Force Awakens, where he said, hey, Rey's lineage is a mystery, and I'm going to set that up. And, what's Snoke's deal? I'm going to set that up. And, just different things like this. Like he's planting the seeds of different things here. And Rian Johnson came in and said, that's not the kind of movie I like to make. I don't like to make movies where, there's a mystery and there's going to be a big twist and stuff like that. I don't like to make those kind of movies. So I'm going to toss all that aside. And, there are so many moments in, it's the quote unquote subverting expectations, but it's not subverting expectations in a clever way or kind of an interesting way. It's just doing it to be like, this is what you expect. I'm going to do the opposite of that.
Right.
And to me, that's not clever. But anyway, so he came in and said, I don't like to make this kind of movie. So Rey is nothing. So, her parents were nothing. And Snoke was nobody. And, there was the big moment at the end of The Force Awakens where she hands the lightsaber to Luke Skywalker, right? And Luke Skywalker, just at the beginning of Last Jedi, just throws it over his shoulder like it's nothing. Right. And it's just like, it's just nothing. Everything's nothing. Luke Skywalker left a map to where he was. Guess what? He never wanted to be found. He's completely removed himself from the Force. No explanation why he left a map, if he never wanted to be found. But just like Rian Johnson was just like, I don't want to do any of this.
So basically, this movie was to The Force Awakens. The second movie was to The Force Awakens, like Trump's presidency was to Barack Obama's.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
And now it's like J.J. Abrams is back, and one of the big problems with this movie is, and so I guess I'll finish my point about how the chatter kind of affects Star Wars more than anything else. This movie feels like it's a very direct response to fans that didn't like The Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. Oh, you didn't like that Rey was nobody? Guess what? She's Palpatine's granddaughter. Because we find that out in this movie. You don't like that Luke threw the lightsaber, over his shoulder? Well, when Rey's throwing it, he catches it and says, oh, that's not a way to treat a lightsaber. Like completely, in your face, Rian Johnson.
Right.
You didn't like that Snoke was nobody? Well, guess what? He was secretly being controlled by Palpatine the entire time. Like everything's been, he's been the big evil around it. And some of those things are somewhat satisfying or could be somewhat satisfying, but it really feels like a fight between fan bases when you've got The Last Jedi and then you've got this movie and The Force Awakens. They're completely, and the biggest problem to me, I know I'm dominating this conversation. I'll let you get a word in a minute, but the biggest problem to me is that J.J. Abrams just didn't do all three movies. He should have. Or someone should have. I don't care if it was J.J. Abrams or somebody else. The biggest mistake they made was saying, let's get J.J. Abrams to do the first one. Then we'll get Rian Johnson to do the second one. And then we'll get Colin Trevorrow to do the guy that did The Lost Worlds. Or, not The Lost Worlds, Jurassic World. We'll get him to do the third one. We'll get three different directors to do the three different movies. Like in the original trilogy, George Lucas directed the first one, then Irving Kershner directed Empire Strikes Back, and Ross Marquand, Ross Marquand's the actor that Robert Marquand, I think his last name's Marquand. But anyway, Lucas basically directed that third movie anyway. But so they were all directed by three different people.
Okay.
And but the problem was you had George Lucas behind it all the entire time in the original trilogy. He wrote all the scripts, first of all, or at least he's got the writing credit on all of them. Now, Lawrence Kasdan helped him with The Empire Strikes Back, and he had help from I think Lawrence Kasdan on Return of the Jedi as well. But he had help with some, and there was a couple that helped him with the script for the first movie as well. So he had some help, but story wise and like complete series arc wise, George Lucas was behind the whole thing. He was like, this is the arc I want everything to go on, and he was really good at that with the Indiana Jones movies as well. He was really good at that. The problem was when he took over everything in the prequels. That's when the problems came along. But Kathleen Kennedy didn't do that. Kathleen Kennedy wasn't like, we're going to make a plan of how we want the story to go, questions that we want answered, everybody's story arc, and stuff like that. They didn't do that. They were just like, JJ, make a movie. And JJ was like, okay, we're going to soft reboot A New Hope because we want to introduce a new fan base to Star Wars and get people excited about Star Wars again and get them to forget the prequels. And then they were like, okay, great, good, movie made a lot of money. Then Kathleen Kennedy said to Rian Johnson, do whatever you want. And Rian Johnson did whatever he wanted, totally disregarding, the first movie. And then they fired Colin Trevorrow because Colin Trevorrow, I guess, was not doing things the way they wanted him to do it. So they brought J.J. Abrams back and said, do your movie. And he definitely made his movie. This feels like a sequel to The Force Awakens, not a sequel to The Last Jedi.
Right.
Although there are places where they directly reference The Last Jedi a few times, but only to kind of be like, oh, yeah, that did happen, but this is actually the truth. Kylo Ren says, "Oh, I didn't lie to you. Your parents were nobody because they wanted to be nobody because your dad was Palpatine's son," which we never saw, by the way. Where was he in the prequels? But whatever. But yeah, so they mention it. But and the other big problem with this movie, to me, or the other major problem with this movie, is it's two movies in one. It's really a second movie in the trilogy of, it's a sequel to The Force Awakens, and then it's a sequel to the second movie that J.J. Abrams never made. There's a bunch of ideas in here. And from the very beginning, we're expected to just accept Palpatine's back. Like in the opening crawl, it's just basically like, Palpatine's back. He sent a message to around the galaxy. It's like, hey, bitches, I'm back. And it was clones. Or he doesn't even say it. He's just like, I'm back and you're all fucked. And, what's his name from Lost? Charlie from Lost is there, and he goes, "Oh yeah, they were messing around with cloning," and that's it. That's the entire explanation, because the movie is like 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and there's no time to go into a long explanation of, yeah, they were doing cloning shit and stuff. Like, I mean, have you ever read the expanded comics, guys? It's in there, because it is in some of the expanded universe stuff. But we're just basically have to accept it's cloning. And we have to accept there's been a certain amount of time that's gone by, and Rey's done her training. One of the things I really liked, though, was how powerful Rey was.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people call her a Mary Sue and say, oh, she's like a totally perfect character and everything, and that's terrible, and she's instantly good at everything. But I like seeing on screen a Jedi that's been training for a long time, that's super powerful with the Force, that can, hold a ship, like a ship from breaking orbit for at least for a little bit. And, she does the Jedi mind tricks with such ease and everything. I like that. I liked seeing that on screen, and she still felt vulnerable. I think this is a really good performance from Daisy Ridley. I think she feels more charismatic, more relatable, more in peril, and more kind of emotionally tested in this movie than she has in any of the other movies.
Yeah, I can see that.
And the other strength to me is that, for the most part, they keep Finn and Poe and Rey together. They keep that triumvirate together. And those three are really talented actors. They're really charismatic actors. They're really good together. They have really good chemistry together. And their story, and I think that was one of the big failings of The Last Jedi, is that for the most part, all three of them are broken up throughout the entire movie. But we also still get stuff with her and Adam Driver, which to me was the best part of The Last Jedi, was the kind of evolution of their relationship, Kylo Ren. Mm-hmm. And they, we were able to see more of that as well. So I think those things were definitely the highlights of the movie, but it definitely does have pacing issues. The beginning is real quick, then it gets slow in the middle, and then it kind of picks up a little bit at the end. What was your favorite part of the movie, do you think?
I mean, it's hard to say, because I didn't like much of the movie, but
okay. So you were really down on this one.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it, but I mean, I guess for the fleeting moment when I thought that her and Kylo Ren would end up together because he brought her back and they kissed, I was happy.
Right.
But then it got destroyed. So, I mean,
yeah.
My favorite and my least favorite moments happened almost simultaneously.
So they establish in the movie that Rey has this power to heal people with the Force. Or giant snakes, too. Which is the first time we see it used. But she can heal people, and she does. And then one thing that I thought was kind of cool is, so she's facing the Emperor, and, the Emperor says he's got all the Sith in him, basically. Mm-hmm. All the Sith live inside of him. And at the beginning of the movie, she was trying to call on the Jedi and, basically communicate with the Jedi of old, and she wasn't able to. And then, at the climactic part of this movie, she's watching as things are starting to fall apart, and she tries to contact the Jedi, and she does. She's able to contact him, and she's like, I've got all the Jedi in me. And so she, kind of Mace Windu style, takes her lightsabers and is like redirecting his Force lightning back into his own face, which I don't understand why he can't just stop doing the Force lightning.
Yeah, that would have made sense.
But whatever, it's the second time. But she dies in doing that. She kills him, but she dies. And I thought that made a lot of sense to me, because it was like balance to the Force. Like, she finally brought balance to the Force, where, you know, he had all the Sith in him, she had all the Jedi in her, and it's like an equation. You know, it's like -4 plus 4, you know, and everything's zeroed out. He died and she died.
I think, honestly, I would have been happier with that ending right there.
Yeah, you know, or, you know, you can have the magic reversal, which they did 3 times in this movie. That's another thing that was like, that was a little annoying to me. Chewie dies, but then he doesn't.
Right.
Chewie dies because it's a switcheroo. The transport that exploded wasn't the transport that he was on. C-3PO gets his memory wiped so that he can decode this Sith thing, right? Mm-hmm. But then his memory gets restored by R2-D2. So it's like, oh, he's fine. And then Rey dies, but Kylo comes to her, you know, does the Force healing on her. She comes back to life. They kiss, and then he dies because he gave all his Force life or power or whatever to restore her to life. And like I said to you, I was like, okay, so now is she gonna do that to him and bring him back, and then but then he disappears, as does Leia. What did you think about how they handled Leia's death?
I don't know.
Because she just reached out to him, but it took all the energy that she had left, and then she died. And then Harrison Ford comes back for a scene to say, "Hey, kid." And I think what originally was probably intended was for that to be Leia.
Huh.
I think that was supposed to be Leia, like, projecting herself like Luke did.
That makes sense.
To talk to him, but they didn't have the footage of it because she was gone.
Because she died.
Yeah, so I think in real life. So I think that's what they intended to do.
So do you think they would have kept Leia alive had Carrie Fisher not passed away?
Yeah, I think they probably would have.
That makes sense.
But so, you know, yeah, he brings her back to life and then he dies. So it's a very Vader-like thing where he sacrifices himself and then he dies and everything.
But here's the thing, like you said about the balance. I mean, now the balance is all off. She's got all the Jedi with her, and the Sith Lord is dead, and Kylo Ren is dead. And who's supposed to balance out the other side of the Force? There's just one very powerful Jedi and no Sith.
Yeah, I know. That's something I'm sure when they start making more movies, they'll be like, oh, there's got to be balance, so Sith are coming back or whatever. So I'm sure that's bound to happen. But yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying there. But yeah, I mean, what did you think about her being Palpatine's granddaughter? Was that like something satisfying to you, or what?
It was okay. I mean, it was. I really thought she would be a Skywalker.
And here's the thing: at the end of the movie, she goes back to Tatooine, or she goes to Tatooine for the first time, really. And goes, you know, back to where the whole thing began at the moisture farm. And she buries the Skywalker's lightsabers underground. And she, even though Leia never grew up there. But,
right.
But she, you know, someone stops and they're like, hey, what's your name? And she's like, Rey. And they're like, Rey what? Just a weird thing to ask. And you know she's not going to say Palpatine because it'll be like, oh, like the fucking Emperor that destroyed all of our lives? You know, so she says Skywalker.
You know,
now, I think the reason is earlier the Emperor says that they're a dyad or something like that. Basically, they're like, their soul is like one, her and Kylo Ren. So in some ways, I guess she kind of is a Skywalker, sort of. And she sees the Force ghost of like Luke and Leia there, and she's like, "Oh, I'm Skywalker." So she's taking the name Skywalker instead of Palpatine. I think it almost would have been better and more satisfying, considering, even though I don't love The Last Jedi and what it did, it would have been more satisfying if they just got rid of the whole Palpatine thing in the first place. If they were just like, you know, your parents were like, special in some way. Like they had the Force or something like that, but they didn't use it, or they wasted it, or they were drunks, like Kylo Ren said, and they never lived up to it. But like you're very powerful in the Force, and that's why I want you, because I'm the Emperor, and blah blah blah, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the movie, if she'd said, they said, "What's your name?" Skywalker, then that would have been like a very satisfying conclusion to her journey. It would have been like she came from nowhere, but she wasn't really nobody. She was able to like fulfill a destiny, and she's taking on this mantle of Skywalker.
Right.
And I think it would have been more satisfying there than making her the granddaughter of the Emperor, in my opinion.
Yeah. I have a question, though, about the end of the movie.
Sure.
The Emperor says to her that, he wants her to kill him.
Right.
Because then they'll be one, because he has all the Sith, and his spirit will go into her and all this crap.
Uh-huh.
But she does kill him.
Yeah.
So why doesn't she get possessed by him?
I don't know. Yeah, it's so weird, because she's like, oh, you can't kill me because then I'll be in you, and we'll rule, and we'll be one. And she does kill him. Like if she does it, she's like, at first she's like, oh, I'm not going to kill you. And then Kylo Ren comes, and then she's able to kill him because of that?
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe because she died?
Maybe.
And then he brought her back. I don't know. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then there's also just these, like, thousands of people in robes.
Oh, yeah, that was freaking weird.
In the background, and we'd never see their faces, and we don't know who they are. They're like, I don't know if they're other clones, like half-formed clones of the Emperor, or if they're supposed to be, like, disciples of the Emperor, or what. But it's weird.
Very weird. And, like the just kind of, like, almost, like, chanting in the background, though. Like, there's so many voices. It was creepy.
And the thing is, what's to say the Emperor can't come back now? He was killed again, but, he was thrown into a frickin', like, energy shaft and, like, blew up with the Death Star, and he came back from that. Basically, that means anyone can come back from anything. Yeah. And I know like the whole clone thing and all this stuff in his consciousness is, somehow, I don't know. But it's really, I don't know, the whole thing's really weird to me. I'll tell you one thing that I thought watching the movie is that, especially when they were on the ship where they land on this Star Destroyer so that they can disable it so the other ships can't, take off on Storm Planet, just a planet with lightning all the time. I thought to myself, this will be really cool when they make the video game. Like playing this level.
Yeah.
Or, because like a lot of it is like that, where it's like, oh, this will be a cool part in the video game.
Yeah.
But, I would put it probably middle of the road.
Okay.
Like I think there was enough good in it with the three leads and everything that I would probably put it around middle of the road. But you seem like you're lower on it than that. Well,
yeah, because the middle was very boring.
The middle is pretty slow.
The end was not satisfying, and it made me angry.
Yeah.
Like many times. So yeah, no, I don't like this movie.
Well, here's the other thing too. So they defeat the Emperor and everything. All the things blow up and stuff, and then they show the Ewoks for like a second, which seems very much like, hey, remember Ewoks? And then Mon Mothma, what's her name? Butthole Eyes.
What?
Her eyes look like buttholes. That little CGI character, the green thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. Maz Kanata. She gives Chewbacca Han Solo's medal. So it's like, oh, the Wookiee finally got a medal, because at the end of A New Hope, the two human beings, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, get medals, and Chewbacca never gets a medal, and it's almost as big as, Han shot first.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, Chewie didn't get a medal, Chewie deserves a medal and everything. It's like Chewbacca got his medal, and that's the part where my eyes rolled so hard in my head. I was like, oh my God. Because that's like takes me out of the movie because it's basically just like I can hear the commenters online and like I can hear J.J. Abrams like knowing this, like knowing that people are saying this. It's basically like movie by committee, you know. It's like they crowdsourced the movie. Let's look at what all the people wanted to see, and then we'll just give them all that.
They're pandering to the audience for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit too much of that and a little bit too much of not an original vision. But I can't totally fault J.J. Abrams on that because they did fire Colin Trevorrow, and J.J. Abrams had like, I think something like 1/4 of the time that they would usually spend to make a movie like this, because they totally threw out the entire script and everything, and they were like to J.J. Abrams, they were like, okay, well the movie's coming out in like in like 7 months, so write a script and film it. See ya, bye. Edit all that shit together too. Like, I mean, 7 months is, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but they had way less time. Like, it takes them like about 2 years to make a movie like this, a year and a half or whatever, to make one of these big movies. And they had, like less than a year to write the script and everything. So a lot of it feels rushed and not completely polished. Like, I can see this as a very good first draft.
Right.
And then they go through and they're like, okay, now let's take some stuff out. Let's move some stuff around. Let's polish some stuff here. But they didn't have time to do any of that. So I think a lot of it is just kind of like, well, let's make something that the audience is going to like. And, they do a lot of pandering because of that. There's not a ton of fan service, but a lot of it is really shoved in at the end. And it was a little bit too much to me. It was a little too schmaltzy.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking. I keep going back to the end of the movie. But,
yeah, go ahead.
When they kissed and everything, like, was that something that you were wanting to see happen? Because it feels like that was another thing that might have been put in just to make people in the audience happy, since it's obviously not going anywhere because he's gone now.
Well, here's the thing. So, some people wanted to see her and Finn get together.
Right.
When, after the first movie. And there's a whole bunch of stuff of like, where Finn's like, Rey, I never told you. And then, and then that never gets addressed.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about it because I was so upset about everything else that was happening.
And then there's a group of people that want to see her and Kylo get together. Which, I probably was more on the her and Kylo side of things. Because I thought that the one good thing that Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi was really build their relationship.
Right.
And I thought it was super interesting. And actually, with all the subverting expectation stuff and doing unexpected stuff, they pussied out when they could have done something really cool. Where when he offers her the hand in The Last Jedi, if she would have taken it instead of like not to, if she would have been like, yeah, let's do it, and let's rule together kind of thing. And then it's like they're not good and not bad, they're like gray Jedi or whatever instead of white, light and dark.
Right.
But they didn't do that. So, but I liked that relationship, and so yeah, I think the kiss is probably also sort of fan servicey, and then obviously he dies, so she's not going to be with him. But I don't know, like I feel like I kind of wish he would have lived so they could get together.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I was happy when I thought that was happening, and now it's not.
Yeah, but I mean, it's that. That's the problem. Is that it's not different enough from the original trilogy. It's basically what happened to Vader, except, Vader didn't fall in love with Rey, or what, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's the same thing where it's like, okay, he did a lot of evil, he got his redemption, now he's gonna die, because, we can't go on from there. I thought it would have been more interesting if Kylo Ren had lived.
Yeah, for sure.
If you want to explore some stories later, when it comes to what they're going to do. Maybe they rebuild the Jedi Order together or whatever. I don't know. But I think it would have been more interesting for the future, in that way. And I think Adam Driver, and particularly the character of Kylo Ren, is maybe the most interesting character with the best actor that this franchise has had.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I think Adam Driver's a very, very good actor, and his character is really interesting. And I think there are a lot of things that they could have explored with his character that, unfortunately, now they won't, unless, I guess he could just get a clone body or whatever, because they defeated death in this universe. So.
This is true.
But yeah, I just, like I said, to me, I have strongly mixed feelings. There were a few things, but I mean, there's more bad than good. But there were some things in the movie that I really enjoyed. That I thought was handled really well. And like I said, J.J. Abrams basically created these characters, Poe Dameron and Rey and Finn, and I think he understands them in a way that Rian Johnson didn't, and I think he was able to handle them and direct them better than he was able to, than Rian Johnson was able to, and I think that really shines through. And I think their relationship and their chemistry really carries the movie when the movie's not as good as their performances in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of bad to slog through too. And like you said, there's a bad pacing issue in the movie where the beginning's real fast, like before you can even really figure out what the hell's going on. It's like, oh, wait, what? Well, what's Kylo doing? Oh, my, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then, the middle kind of slows down a lot. And then the end ramps up as far as pacing goes, whether you find it satisfying or not. But the pacing ramps up a lot at the end. And then it's over. So yeah, there's definitely some pacing issues. Overall story structure, I think, is fine, though. And what'd you think of the humor in this movie? Because one of the big complaints about The Last Jedi was that it wasn't Star Wars like humor. What did you think of the moments of jokes in this movie?
I don't remember laughing ever. So obviously was not impressed by them.
You didn't laugh when C-3PO's memory got erased and he had basically 1 day of memory and someone was like, oh, the guy that erased his memory said you were going to be coming, and C-3PO was like, oh, that's one of my oldest friends.
No.
Yeah, to me there were a couple of funny parts, I thought, but for the most part, I think it was a pretty straight space adventure. I think Rian Johnson was trying to make a comedy, and it didn't fly.
Right.
But what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, the other thing that I wanted to point out is this is John Williams' last movie as a composer, and I don't love the music.
Aww.
I know it sucks because I listened to this the second time watching it. I especially listened to it because I didn't notice it much the first time through, but I listened to it the second time through pretty closely. And the best parts of the score are when he's just doing a riff on older, pieces of music. The original written stuff for this just isn't great.
It didn't stand out.
It's pretty bland.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know John Williams. John Williams is a brilliant composer, obviously one of the best to ever live. But I do think it's probably time for him to be done because, at some point you just kind of it kind of runs out, and I think it's kind of done.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I got to say about it. You've got anything to say about this? I mean, we've spoken for almost 40 minutes about this movie.
No, I mean, like I said, it's just I'm not in love with this movie at all. It was not my favorite.
Yep. Unfortunately, I kind of have to agree. I still would. I would put it above Attack of the Clones, which is the worst movie. I'd probably put it above The Last Jedi, and it's to me, it's probably on par with Revenge of the Sith, the quote unquote best of the prequel films. It's probably on par with that.
Okay.
I might actually put Revenge of the Sith above it now that I'm thinking about it because I think the structure of that movie's a little bit better. But anyway, so that is our episode. Tell us what you think. Go to Twitter at Massive Late Fee. Tell us what you think about that. Check out Retro Late Fee, of course, the show that Carol and I do together. We will have best of episodes of Retro Late Fee and Massive Late Fee coming out around Christmas time, and then we will be back in the new year. Like I said, let us know what you think. Other than that, I don't know. Tell friends, go to Patreon, do all the stuff that you do for us, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.